flourishing, but not for profiteering. That would be the way to look at why we want to come together and do something. Now, the next point would be to note that if we have identified a target group and say that they miss something in their life and we are in a position to supply it to them, it may not be possible in all cases for the target group to pay for their own expenses. Malnourishment of children is a very good example of this, where the parents may not be in a position to first know what is wrong with the child, may not be able to do much about it unless something else comes to support them in addressing the issue of malnourishment of their children. So there are many other examples, but I'll stick to only this healthcare. Health also depends much on the ambience, the environment under which people are living. And it's not merely the question of going to a doctor when you are sick. For that, this is a different equation over there. So part of the cost or most of the cost of whatever is being provided to that recipient is coming from this altruistic motive, welfare-oriented goal. It may be a governmental scheme or it may be a purely voluntary effort of an international NGO or a national NGO. But the source of income is not tied to the ability of the beneficiary to pay for that service. This is very crucial. In a business deal, in a professional setting, people can pay money and receive services. Whereas in this sector, people may not be in a position to pay, and therefore this issue of source of income becomes important. But yet, merely because money is made available and money is being spent, it does not mean that the voluntary sector is accountable only for people who give the money. They are equally accountable for who receive the money. Because this is where the idea of transparency of operations, transparency of motives becomes very crucial. So the dual accountability is not merely that whoever gave me the money, I will give an account to that person or to that agency. It is also equally important for me as a voluntary setup to inform who receives it what he is supposed to receive and what he has received. So accountability is a very important issue, and which both ways within governmental systems or in the private sector, organized sector, this accountability is basically upwards. We are accountable for what we do to our bosses, to no one else. Whereas here, in this voluntary sector, we are accountable to both sides. Next one, please. Gayatri. Now, there is a lot of difference between a variety of voluntary organizations, what we call NGOs. There is, both have their space, both are relevant, but they are honestly not interchangeable. An actionist which believes in doing things by itself for whatever its objectives are. An activist, on the other hand, pushes others to do things. So there is a difference between the actionist type of NGOs and the activist type of NGOs. Activists would be better situated to take things with other people, with other agencies, and push for their ideas so that somebody else works on those ideas and puts them into practice. The activists are very good communicators with people who don't know about their object. People may have money, they may not have any idea. So the role of the activist would be to say, look, here is a problem. Now you do something about it, and then things will fall in line. So they are telling others what to do. Actionist, actionist is a relatively, what shall I say, more deeply entrenched kind of activity where we don't stop at merely thinking what we should do, but we also end up doing those things ourselves. If we can't do it, we can't tell others that they should do it. So, actionist, this will become very clear to people who join the voluntary sector, the NGO sector in the coming days, that you have to make up your mind whether you want to be in the activist role or in the actionist role. So this week I'll be able to discuss this if I have some specific studies coming on these lines. But please note it for the time being that actionist is hands-on, activist is action at a distance. Now, the focus of any development organization would be major. If you look at this, livelihoods is a very important thing because jobs is what counts, income is what counts. Education, health, hygiene, sanitation, environment, social empowerment, addressing the lives, poor, marginalized sections of society. These are things which focus not so much on the individual, but on the family, the group, the village. So when we look at a hygiene sanitation issue, we are not looking at a particular person. We are saying, let this village be fully prepared. Let safe drinking water be made available. Let waste disposal be arranged for the village. So there we don't distinguish between people and people. We say for this area, we should have this kind of facility. But there is another focus also which is possible for voluntary organizations to take individuals. The best example of this would be orphanages. Now, it's the individual child which has become an orphan, which needs protection, care, nurturing. And it's not so much what we can do for the overall problem of children in that age group, but that particular orphan and how it is to be settled, how the problem is to be addressed. So there are individual cases like this, which is equally true of animal welfare. When you talk in terms of animal welfare also, the same thing of saying that we pay attention to what is happening to that individual rather than to the group becomes important. Now, there are so many other types of focus areas like art and culture, church-based, denomination-based support services. Perfectly fine for those small subsets of groups for whom they are meant. So this is the focus where you move from very large areas like environment, because practically everyone can keep working in the environment sector, starting from government, private sector, organized private sector, and the voluntary organizations, because environment is all comprising of various other factors. The other way to distinguish between voluntary organizations categories is grassroots and fundraising. Both have a crucial role to play. It is the grassroots organization working with the individual families in the small slum or small village or small area of a town who know what is needed, who know what is possible to be given, and who know what is sustainable. But all their efforts will be driven by the ability of the fundraising voluntary organizations. If the fundraising voluntary organizations cannot do this job in a global way, probably the grassroots organization will not be able to do it themselves. For the simple reason, number one, they are grassroots, so their reach is limited. Number two, they will be drawn into another kind of specialization for which they are not equipped. The grassroots organizations have a limited scope of ability to communicate and say, this is why we want extra funds, this is why we want to scale up. So when it comes to scaling up, it is the fundraising voluntary organizations, which are international or which may be national. They do a good job, and that requires a specialized niche. Fundraising is not everybody's cup of tea. The person who does a very good job in looking after the health of a malnourished child may not be very good in raising funds which will support 10,000 such children. So these are different skill sets, and these require different abilities to be nurtured. Now, this definition of national and international NGOs varies from time to time. Now, when you are focusing on your object within the nation, you can be called national. But if you now expand your idea and go somewhere else, like in the past few years, Myrada has been working in Africa. The challenges which come in Africa are not the same as challenges in India, but they are similar. As far as the Africans are concerned, we are an international NGO because we are able to now tell them on the basis of what we have learned in India, what they should be doing in Africa. But within India, when we do our work, we don't have this identity of international NGO. We only do what needs to be done in that particular district or in that particular. So this is the way I would say broadly to remember from this would be the actionist and activist. Basically, this is because this is very important by way of approach to what you want to be doing as a voluntary organization. Gayatri, next.
Some statistics here from the Niti Aayog's.
Now, let me put the statistics is there for anybody to see, but I will only put one small information on this. About 2 or 3 years back, the Home Ministry, which controls or which regulates the foreign contribution received by NGOs, went on a very specific review of who was receiving this contribution, where was it going, whether it was coming in the first place or not. And as a result, they substantially reduced the number of NGOs which were registered for receiving foreign contribution and which were not receiving any. That number dropped so significantly. Currently, there are only about 22,000 NGOs which are on the Home Ministry's list of eligible recipients for foreign contribution. And that number is still likely to reduce, not increase as time goes on. So at this stage, I would hand over to Gayatri for taking up the next few. Please.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to the university for giving us this opportunity to talk about the jobs that we love so much and where we would really like some good, very enthusiastic, very highly motivated people to come in. So I'll be just taking a few slides on what are the legal and administrative framework, what are the different types of jobs that are there in the sector, and what are the skill sets that, how do we arrive at those skill sets, and how do we, what is the final thing that we are looking at when we are looking at people who are coming in into this sector. Being voluntary shouldn't be confused with volunteerism. Voluntary organizations are formal entities registered as maybe societies, trust, or even as Section 8 company under Indian Companies Act. Registration under Section 8 company is like, you cannot take away the profit. So you are a social enterprise, you make the profit, but the profit is plowed back into the objectives of the organization. Any voluntary organization has to be very motivated, very clear in its goals and objectives, for whom they are working, what are the things that they are looking to achieve. So this is the crux of their existence. we need to have very strong governance, continuously guiding us as to which area we are getting into. Are we doing the right thing, or are we doing not the right thing? Being a voluntary organization, we also require very well-defined administrative structure, which is the requirement of any organization. This administrative structure forms the backbone, the framework of running of the organization. We also need to have books of accounts. It has to be maintained as per rules and regulations. And the trust that we earn with the community does come from how transparent we are in our dealings. The trust we earn with our donors is also based on how transparent we are in how we spend our money and how we keep record of that money. Though there are volunteering opportunities in voluntary sector, quite a few of them, but most of these organizations and here are run through regular jobs, and these job roles have quite a few growth opportunities. So I will just take you through this. Here we have broadly limited ourselves to the organizations which are in the voluntary development organization. The first thing that Mr. Rispo talked about the community focus development kind of things. So the organizations that are working in a community development sector. So here what we are looking at, there are 3-4 types of jobs. The first and foremost which drives these organizations is the community facing job roles. So here the basic requirement is that you are interacting every day with the community for the people you work for. So it is the village, or if you're in a city, it could be those communities. Anywhere, the requirement is to be having a good communication, good rapport with the people you're working on. Then there are program execution roles. So whether we are taking a project on malnutrition, whether we are taking a project on afforestation, or we are taking a project on social enterprise, the program execution, there are different roles in program execution that have to be done. And again, this is a community facing job. You are working with the community to implement those programs. Then a large part of this kind of job involves a certain level of building the capacities of the people we work with, the communities we work with. So maybe there may be formal trainings, there may be informal trainings, there could be different ways of building capacities of the communities that we work with. And this is a very important aspect of the job that we do. This is what leaves when we withdraw from a place. This is what makes our work sustainable. The communities have learned it from us that this is the way things have to be done, and we can continuously do it even in the absence of the voluntary organization that initially supported the project. Similarly, now we have at the community level, there are small enterprises that come up, and quite a few of these are community enterprises, maybe individual enterprises as well. The need for augmenting livelihoods, the need for earning better income leads them to these social enterprises. And there is a need for people, educated people coming in who can give a professional touch to these social enterprises in terms of knowing how to do the costing, how to do the market linkage, how to strengthen the supply chains, how do you do brand building, how do you do financial management within those social enterprises, how do you do leadership management, how different job roles within the social enterprise, the social enterprise, how do you manage that itself is a challenging role that we have in the development sector now. Then for each of these jobs that we do, we have to take help of technical experts. Now, these may be coming from IT sector, helping us with putting together certain data, certain ways of collecting data or certain ways of analyzing data. Could be agronomists showing certain kinds of demonstrations, training the farmers maybe on different new kinds of crops, new varieties of seeds, or new methods of farming. It could be health experts who come in to maybe to train the mothers on how to take care of their malnourished children, and several such specialists who come in and who have a role to play in these voluntary sector. Then, of course, since the voluntary organizations are unlike any other organizations, then we have the administrative roles, very clear on finance. We have to be very compliant with all the rules and regulations of the land. HR management, so once the employees come in, they have joined our organization or any voluntary organization, their HR development requirements are the same as is in any other organization. The management of the payroll, the skills training, the further training that might be required, or any other kind of support that they require as a staff of the organization has to be taken care of. The IT, I mean, we are not untouched by IT. We are quite a part of this IT revolution, and we have, as voluntary organizations, we have our own needs of keeping data, large number of data, community data, and doing the analysis, being able to give an analysis, being able to evaluate the programs that we have done. So those are the things that we require, for which we require these IT people as well. Documentation is a very important part of the work the voluntary organizations do. So most of the times it is like they're very good in innovation. They have tried out a kind of development model in a village or in a city, and that needs to be documented, that what was the process of it, what were the results of it, what are the learnings, and how they can be further incorporated into doing new programs. So that becomes a very interesting as well as a very crucial job that is there in the voluntary organization. Of course, training, as in training of both our staff as well as the community facing people, the people or from the community level workers that we get, their training becomes a very important part. That is how, I mean, the backbone of running the organization. Then there are research and policy advocacy kind of jobs. These are relates more to the what we do. So when we have done certain kind of work, or if we are just looking at certain issues that exist, when we collect the data, we analyze, we do the research on those, and we are able to say that if this thing was done in a different manner, this is the way the community is going to benefit. So this is a completely different line of jobs that is there, where you look at the existing community, existing development, and you come up with certain lines of policy advocacy that can be taken up at relevant levels of government. Fundraising is one of the very because as Mr. Iswood mentioned in the earlier slide, the community for whom we are working, they are not our paymasters. They do not even pay for the services that they get. They may only partly be paying in certain cases for the services that they receive. So the fund has to come from organizations which are outside of it, and it could be corporates, it could be government, it could be simple fundraising agencies. So this is where you pitch in the project, you pitch in why you require the funds, and then you pitch your project to different agencies, and you have to have those marketing and networking and selling skills to be able to gain their trust and be able to get that fund to be spent on something that is not their own. It's something of a, of the company, those people be spending their funds on. So these are the different kinds of job roles broadly that exist in the voluntary development sector. Going further, I just thought maybe to anchor the kind of jobs that we have, I just thought we can take some examples. Say when we look at a project life cycle, there are different tasks associated with each of these phases of the project life. So when we are doing an initiation of the project, I mean, largely there are 4 stages in any project life cycle, which is the initiation, the planning, execution, and project closure phases. In the initiation phase, what we look at is, say, interacting with the community. If we are looking at, we come to know of that this Gram Panchayat is much poorer in the development parameters, or this district is much poorer, can we do something about there? So when we do a first level of interaction, we understand what the community is like. We do a data collection, both primary as well as the secondary data collection. We have to get an idea of what is the problem, what are the different kinds of problems that are there, and what are the plausible solutions, looking at what are the resources that is available, what are the plausible solutions, or what feasible solutions that exist. So we get a very basic idea of what can be done in that particular case. Then what we do, we come into the phase of, let's do something about it. Then we look at actual design of a project, where we are looking at mapping the resources that are available within the community, around the community, from the different sources, and what are the resources that would be required for us to deliver those solutions. We design the project, what will be the tasks required, what will be the budgets, what will be the timelines, how do we execute that, and these have to become part of a proposal. This proposal has to be pitched with maybe some donors, some fundraisers, kind of thing. I'm just taking an example of a project that we do in MyRADA, of MyRADA-like organizations. Similarly, then when we go into the next phase of execution, we're looking at the tasks that were initially planned, how they are being executed, how the community.
Madam, sorry for the interruption. Your system has got muted, ma'am. Hello? Hello? Madam? Madam, sorry for the interruption. You just got muted, ma'am. Madam, kindly unmute it, ma'am.
Looking at the project closure, where the project has come to an end, what we are looking at is doing project evaluation, documentation challenges, and documenting the challenges and the learnings. So this is basically the different phases of the project, and these are the different tasks. Now, with related to each task, there is a certain skill set. So yeah. So basically, I've just taken an example. So say I've taken a few tasks out of the previous slide of community interaction, say proposal preparation and pitching and monitoring and supervision. In each of these tasks, there is certain skill required, there is certain knowledge required, certain experience or education that is required to be executing. Now, you may not be executing just one task, it will be a cluster of tasks, a particular job role that you would be executing. So based on this kind of mapping, we arrive at what are the skills required, what are the knowledge required, and experience and education that might be required for being able to do the task. So Frank, what I'm coming to is that the tasks and the job roles, they determine the kind of skills that will be required. Now, listening to Dr. Sashikant in the beginning, you have this university has a wide number of courses that are being run, and I'm sure there are people of different kinds of skills, different kinds of knowledge who are coming in. So there would be something for most of them. And so finally, to just to wrap it up, what we look for in any person who is coming to who is looking to join a voluntary sector, uh, more on the attitude side. They must have empathy, should be able to understand the community that they work with, or the problems that they are facing, or the issues that they are facing. The domain knowledge, of course, it is a lifelong thing. You keep learning and understanding, and your understanding keeps getting better and deeper as you go on in the field. There is a need to retain that focus on the purpose of why you are here, what you are trying to do. So that is required. There is no substitute for getting involved. Unless you are involved, unless you have done the thing firsthand, uh, as a fresher, there is no way you can grow. What we are looking in the voluntary organization is to be able to solve the problems of the people we work with. So this is a very crucial thing. When we are looking at people, we are not looking just as at problems. We are looking at the problem solving ability of the the freshers who come in. They should have when they see a problem, they should be able to figure out which are the resources, or how are we going to be able to solve the problem. And finally, this is very crucial, is that the people must have that ability to introspect. That is, you have seen something, you have gone through a certain experience, the project has project is going through a certain phases. You should be able to sit back and look at it and see, be able to observe and see what is happening, and how do we make changes, how do we take corrective steps to be able to take it to the next level. Yeah, so these are the skill sets. Broadly, anybody coming into the voluntary organization should have. Then I will just try and see if I can share some videos with you. Let me just see if it is. Is it audible?
Madam, not audible, ma'am.
Not audible. Just, do you have the video with you? Have you received it?
Yes, madam, I have received, ma'am. Shall I play, ma'am?
Yeah, please
Yes.
do it from there. That would be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
I hope this is audible, ma'am.
No, sir, this is not audible.
Yes, sir.
Only video is coming.
Yes, sir. Sir, probably I do not get the options that videos audible is.
Okay, let me try once more.
Yes, sir.
Is it audible now?
No, actually.
Okay, let me just see if I can share the audio itself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Where is share audio? Is it audible now?
No, ma'am.
Not
Voice
yet.
is not. Yes, ma'am.
I think I have to
Play audio.
share the computer.
One minute. Madam, I'll just try once, ma'am.
Okay.
Watershed project past
Hope
1
this
year.
is audible, ma'am, now.
I am MA graduate student. I studied Hi, I am R. Perumal Sami from Mayrada Osur project. I am working as a sociologist under Mayrada at NABARD Watershed project past 1 year. I am MA graduate student. I studied MA Development Administration in the Gandhiram Rural Institute, deemed to be University, Dindigul at Tamil Nadu. In the university, main aim is rural people get good education in the society. In my college days, students we are went to extension education, field visits, village camps. Like in village camps, we stayed on villages 7 days to study about the village infrastructures, rural people living conditions in the society. We interact with rural peoples like social, economic and political aspects. Through these components, I know about the rural infrastructure, rural people living conditions in the society. And I also participated in cultural events in my college days. I participated in drama and mime in state level, South Zone level and national level. In my final year, campus interview conducted by the Mayrada at my department, I was selected in that campus interview at Mayrada at 2019. Last 1 year, I was working in Mayrada Osur project. After joining Mayrada, I know Mayrada also working for the rural people in the society. I am very much happy about the part of Mayrada to work for the rural peoples in the society. And I also thanks to Mayrada to improve myself in the society. And I increased my skills and knowledges in my working areas. And in my financial status also little increased thanks to Mayrada. In my future plan is to work and to service to the rural peoples in the society. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you for that one. I will just go back to my presentation.
Please, ma'am.
Yeah, if, okay, I'll just go back. Okay, so there was one more thing. I mean, I'm seeing certain questions regarding the voluntary organization. What do you require? There is that attitude to be, be able to have that welfare orientation kind of thing and the altruistic purpose, or to do good kind of thing that Mr. Vice Chancellor in the beginning pointed out. That is very critical. So it's this set of skills what we have here. It's not just important for the individuals who are joining the voluntary organizations, but it is important for the voluntary organizations themselves to have these skills or have these things within them to be able to continue and sustain and keep working. So that is what was from my side. If Mr. Rizwood would like to
Yeah.
add something to it.
Sure, keep this slide, please. You know, these skill sets, empathy, domain knowledge, retaining focus, getting involved, ability to solve problems, ability to introspect, these are individual skill sets, but collectively they mean a lot for the organization. If an organization can have a very large number of people who possess this skill set, and those people are willing to work continuously for the organization, then the organization itself gets this set of skill sets, and it is able to take on other challenges, other problems, precisely because the individuals working with the organization know and they possess this 6 bullets which we have talked about here. Domain knowledge is a dynamic thing. As you keep working, you get more and more domain knowledge. But if you lose empathy, if you lose focus, if you stop getting involved, then, and if you don't have the ability to introspect anymore, then you cannot solve the problem. Therefore, it's important to note that this skill set is applicable for the individual and for the organization for which the individual works. So that would be, I think we have taken enough time for talking. If there are questions, I think that is the only way we proceed forward. I leave it to Dr. Shashikant to take it forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir and madam, for your wonderful session. Before we take up the session, I just would like to introduce the madam. Ms. Gayatri Lal madam is the alumni of the Delhi School of the Economics, and she has about 12 years of experience working in the voluntary sector. She has been working with the MyRadar since from the 2013 as a program officer. In this role, she is responsible for design and implementation of the projects, particularly regarding the skill building and the farmer production organizations. Madam, we are thankful to you for accepting our invitation, and we have delivered a wonderful session regarding what skill sets are required for the present voluntary organizations. In that certain, there are few questions that's been raised by our participants. That's with respect to the first question. That's for the Rizwood sir. That has been raised in the manner that the challenges to the newborn registered societies who wish to work in the rural areas at the present time, as well as for the newly establishments.
The challenges will not disappear, whether it's a new establishment or an old establishment. In fact, in the past few months, very many institutions, organizations which were 10, 15 years old also face this problem. In fact, they face the problem of survival. So the challenges for new institutions will remain. The challenges for old institutions will remain, because the whole difficulty now is the need for development in a sustained way is very important, but the means of fulfilling that need is shrinking or contracting. Thanks to COVID, all national efforts would be focused on addressing the issue of health. So the kind of rural development of the area or of the community or of the individual, which would have been the focus if there was no COVID, will now get defocused. Most focus will be on health and health related issues. And this is natural, because if COVID is here, then it has to be addressed on priority basis. So the other items will take a second seat. Unfortunately, this is true. And I expect difficulties in the community also to rise. Joblessness in the rural areas will increase. The existing agriculture cannot sustain more number of influx of people coming from city areas, and obviously there is not much work left for the agriculture sector to provide for these people who have come back from cities. Nor can they be fully occupied in the villages. Now, there is a problem. So the challenge of starting something as a new entity to address an existing problem is different from the challenge of serving out your time. Because you see, normally they say the 3 R's: rescue, relief, and rehabilitation for the community are the 3 factors for in any kind of crisis. Now, rescue is an immediate short-term thing. If like in Beirut, now we see hundreds of thousands of people have become entrapped, and then they have lost their homes. So rescue is an immediate 1 to 2 weeks activity. Relief may extend for a month or a year, but rehabilitation takes a much longer time, because rehabilitation takes several years and it requires much more investment of efforts, money, priority, everything. Therefore, post-COVID, because we can't even say it is post-COVID, we are during mid-COVID season now. We can't say that COVID is over and now it's back to business as before. It won't be like that. So the opportunities for income generation, the opportunities for spending, the opportunities for keeping healthy will increase, but the means of doing it will be less. So this is a reality which we'll have to live with. Challenges will not disappear.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more question in the relevance of the COVID-19, that Mr. James has rightly pointed that the COVID-19 that preaches for the social distancing. So how this is going to affect on the community organizations?
Yes, people will find their own way of maintaining social distance, using PPEs, being not a problem to others, but it will take some time. Earlier, the method of doing things was to sit together in a school, sit together in a group, very close to each other, on the assumption that we are all same, similarly situated. But now, because of this unique situation, social distancing has to be maintained during any kind of interaction. So, but it is possible, because this digital way of communication is something for the past 4 months we have been trying out in Mairadar. For instance, I'll give you an example. We had trained some women volunteers in villages to go and check the health status of TB patients. Now, this was something which was ongoing as a project starting from January. But because of COVID, the situation changed, and instead of holding large-scale meetings where everybody gathered together, now our community resource person actually goes to that individual home, maintains the distance, and after giving that whatever interaction, this is documented. Thanks to availability of mobile phones, now it is possible to document and upload this information about how we are maintaining social distance, how we are maintaining our way of doing things with the proper protocol is possible. It takes some time, but now everybody has understood the the reasoning behind this. So I'm sure it becomes a way of life in the coming days, the social distancing for everything, like any meeting.
Thank you. A question for the madam. Madam, a question that's been raised by the Nalwar, that's regarding the freshers. A fresher can establish or join the volunteer organizations. So, in the present situation, how a fresher can initiate for the establishment of the volunteer organizations and which sectors are profitable? Being the students, it's a right question. I believe that regarding the profitable, though these volunteer organizations are not meant for the profitable sectors, still a question that's been raised by a student stating that how a fresher shall enter for the volunteer organizations.
What we have as institution or MyRADA-like institutions, quite a few of us do campus, when we participate in campus placements. When we receive profiles, we go through them and we are always on the lookout for young, enthusiastic people who can join us. That is for joining the organization. But prior to that, we also look for interns who can, who come in for a month or 2 months and give us some very fresh look at the things that we are doing, or, some new ideas about how we can do that. So in both ways, it is open. Also, we are open to receiving, or most of the organizations are have their, on their portal, there will be a career section, or you can directly email to them through their contacts, your profile and your interest, and maybe a little write-up of what you want to do. You shouldn't be, as a fresher, my suggestion would be, when you're looking to get into any sector, you shouldn't be looking at which sector is making the most profit. It has to be your interest, your ability to, empathize with that sector. If say today I tell you that the health sector, it's the largest number of NGOs are in the health sector, and it's the most thriving sector, maybe because of COVID, or because of various other things. Maybe I'm not. I'm just giving an example. Now, when you get into the sector just because it's a thriving sector, but your own abilities, your own interest, you're really not interested in the biology of a person and the, how things work out there, then in the long run, there is a kind of a contradiction between your own interests, your own ability to do things, and the expectations of the organization, expectations of the sector. So definitely the first thing is to be looking at your own self. What are you interested in, where you will be really happy to get involved and do something, what motivates, that kind of thing, rather than just looking at which sector is the most thriving sector. And that also changes from time to time. Nothing remains, one sector that will remain constantly thriving all the time. So yeah, that is how I would look at it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. A participant would like to
there
speak,
is one
ma'am.
more.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just one more thing is also these jobs are available on job portals. There are, the usual portals, Naukri.com or Monster, and then there are DevNet jobs, or there is what was Third Sector Partners. So there are different job portals also where these jobs are available. There is one particular set of jobs that we have left out of this presentation is regarding corporate social responsibility. Now, that's somewhere in between the, it's a corporate job facing the voluntary sector. So that is actually a corporate job in that sense, if you look at it. But they also look for people from, backgrounds of community development or rural development or environment and those kind of things. So that is another aspect that is open to the students, and that is again through maybe through their own portals or through open job portals that they can look at.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This participant would like to raise the question, ma'am. I'll be just allowing her to speak.
Yeah.
Ms. Latika?
Yes, speaking.
Yes,
thank
please.
you.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Good morning to all the panelists. I'm very thankful to be listening to you. My question pertains to the relationship and collaboration between educational institutions and voluntary organizations. I have believed in and I have been trying to uh, uh, bring together various organizations for optimal utilization of resources and also to reach out to the underprivileged. In this, with your experience, kindly elaborate what strategic points should be kept in mind when an educational institution collaborates with a voluntary organization to provide a solution or training or empowerment to a section of the society?
I'll take it, Gayatri.
Arvind Rishmur can add, but I can only say that as a university, we are always open to have collaboration with voluntary organizations. We would like to always be helpful to each other and also to the sector and the society. Further, if you can come forward and meet us at Gadag, we will try to draw a joint plan of action. Thank you. Arvind.
Okay, thank you. Now, there are so many ways of looking at education sector interaction. See, the most crucial aspect in any school is the student body. Now, everything is meant for the students, their growth. They come in and then they get out of the school after 4 years, 5 years, or whatever, depending on what level of school it is. They should feel thrilled to be part of anything which is happening for them. So if a voluntary organization wants to work with the school, it's not enough to work with the school principal or the school headmaster and the teachers. We have had this experience in the past several years now in Tamil Nadu and in Karnataka. School students are so interested in what we are doing for them that after school hours, they sit back for another 2 hours in a special center and keep doing things which they would like to do, which they cannot do at home. We call it the Child Resource Center. We have a fully trained functional person sitting there helping out those children. We have provided computers where in other places they would not be having access to computers. It's very much possible to generate this kind of enthusiasm in the children. And now the parents, after about 4 or 5 months of this, the parents came to thank us to say, now thanks to you, our children want to go to school. After school, they want to sit in the CRC. They are telling us things which otherwise we would not have known. Everybody has TV at home, but these children have computers and they are working very well. So what we are able to do is to capture the student body as an audience, and then things will be all right. In fact, I'll be very happy to introduce something which I saw in a school. The students are allowed to work on a 3D printer. Now, this is something which in rural India was unbelievable just a few years back. Our university introduces a 3D printer in your section, and then that becomes a role model for other schools, high schools, where the children learn some things which even city boys and girls may not be able to learn hands-on. So it's possible. It only requires you to connect with the children very effectively. One more example I will give you. In a school where we worked, each child was given a particular plant to grow and to take off. So over the next few months, we had hundreds of children joining this activity and very proudly proclaiming that this is my plant, this has grown well, this has given so much of flowers or whatever it was. The amount of enthusiasm which the children showed was good enough for us to understand that it's possible. Target the children and they will be happy to come and support the system themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So there are a few more questions. I just would like to merge them. Sir, we know that the COVID-19 has drastically hit every sectors in the India. So with that relevance, the two questions that's been raised by Dr. Kurodi and Dr. Kulkarni, that's about the prerequisite things that voluntary organizations needs to be initiated, as well as the initial grants from the government to start the NGOs. So this is one question, sir. And one more question is that there are so many people who have lost their jobs because of the COVID. As NGO, how can help these people in the present situation, sir?
Tricky questions, I should say, because government support to an NGO should come after the NGO has established itself, its credentials, its ability to deliver. It cannot be a prerequisite for saying that you take this money and start an NGO, and it won't remain an NGO. It will become a governmental agency. So I would be much against this concept of beginning an NGO enterprise with governmental money. For that, you may need to go to the private sector, the CSR sector, convince them of what you want to do, and then they should be able to invest in you, but not the government. Government will have many issues. They will not know how to defend choosing you as the recipient of that money, because they have no experience, they have not done anything. So better not to include this. Now coming to unemployment situation or the change of employment scenario because of COVID, I'm afraid we'll have to live with this situation for some time, because I don't see economy going back to its normal levels of 2019, at least for the next 2 years. So it is difficult. It is difficult to say what will happen. Health sector probably will grow. Agriculture will retain its importance, because agriculture is crucial to support the PDS in the country. So it will happen. Rest of it, I am not very sure how it will. Very many things will have to take a big budget cut in the coming days. This is what I feel. So government may not be a source of money anymore for certain activities. That is my feeling.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There's one participant, Mr. Satish. He would like to speak. Mr. Satish? Mr. Satish, you are audible. Okay. May I request the other participants who would like to speak or kindly drop your questions in the Q&A panel so that we can bring in the notice? Any other participants? Yes, sir. Sir, there is one professor, Professor Mohammed Joher. Professor, you are audible. Professor, kindly unmute.
If you have any questions, present it, Shashikant.
Sir, questions are over, sir. These people.
No, okay. If there are some potential people who want to ask, let them ask.
Yes,
or
sir.
Let us go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Now I am audible to you, please.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice presentation and organization. Platform here. You have tried a lot to focus on voluntary organization development. It is a special domain opportunity for us. The first time for the last 2 or 3 months, I have participated more than 100 webinars and conferences all over the world, including India and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Europe, America, Japan, etc. But nobody has focused on the voluntary organization. Only I would like to salute you for this. My question is that the voluntary organization like India, Bangladesh, and other countries, they can survive because of human involvement is necessary for voluntary works, and people are really take initiative with their humanity, efforts, and personal money. But there is some sort of the fund should be developed in voluntary organizations. So how can a voluntary organization like school, college, university, or in society can be sustained for the long run connecting the people through the non-profit marketing or any other practices, and fund and other program can be initiated and the transparency can be maintained. So I would like to request the panelists, especially for focusing on this. People are very much interested because of two types of people are here. One type of people is very much deprived person. They want to do for the community development, and other people, those who are in the job or professional business, they're in the very good position. They want to donate as a CSR issues or as a part of their commitment to the society or as a human being. So in this regard, how can you connect these programs jointly initiated by different countries or within the country or in society for the long run perspective? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Rishmurji will.
I see one question here which I would like to answer as much as possible. Mr. Ghanashyam Das
Yes, sir.
has raised the issue why NGO or voluntary organization work not having long-lasting impact in the field. It's very difficult to say what is a long-lasting impact of any intervention, especially in the developmental sector. A long-lasting impact should be measured in terms of some decades, not more than that. In India, we have had the green revolution in the 60s, the white revolution in the 70s, and after that, I don't see any revolution which has taken place. There was a talk of blue revolution, there was a talk of some digital revolution, but they are not in the same category as the green and the white revolution. So the impact even of these has come to a somewhat loose end now. Therefore, to say that NGOs don't leave an impact is as good as saying government doesn't leave an impact. The community changes within 50 years, the nature of problems changes, the nature of crisis changes. So it's not possible to give a long lasting. Your time frame should be committed to a decade or 2 decades. From that perspective, any NGO which knows how to do its job makes a full impact for the 2 decades or 3 decades of its work. That is a given. Let's not assume that there is no impact, because then we'll have to ask the persons who benefited from it, and then you will get a very happy feeling that yes, there was an impact which was felt across 10 years. So this is the feeling with which you should begin. If you begin your exercise of NGO building or voluntary sector work with the feeling that it is not going to create an impact, you will lose your empathy for it. You will lose your interest in doing it. So why should you do something which is not going to last for a day, for a week, for a month? Therefore, the question poses another issue. What is your time frame in doing things? If you have a 4-year degree course, then you expect your 4-year degree course to lead you to a 35-year career based on that educational background. Now, if you have a 4-year involvement in a voluntary sector, you should expect about 15 to 20 years of impact, provided you have done the job well. Of course, that goes without saying. So that is all what I thought I should say. And
thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, there's one more question that's been raised by the same person. That's about the Ghanashyam Das. That there is a lackness in the review policies of the NGOs in the field, as well as, and he believes that NGO work very essential for the working in the society. So this is the this is the things he has expressed over here. I believe that before we wrap up this question and answer session, that we have clarified all the doubts of the attendees, and There is no more questions that's been in the Q&A panel. So may I request Dr. Abdul Aziz sir to put the concluding remark and the vote of thanks.
Yes. Am I audible, sir?
Sir, you are audible.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Respected speakers, Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Honorable Registrar, and the people who have joined to this webinar. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, Karnataka State Rural Development and Panchayat Raj University, Gadag, we had organized one webinar on employment opportunities and expectations of voluntary organizations. Especially, we took the nomenclature, not telling as NGO, we wanted to say it is a voluntary organizations. And are both the speakers, Arvind sir and Gayatri madam. Especially Arvind sir, he has elaborately told what do you exactly mean by definition of voluntary organizations and how they work. And in a nutshell, he has informed what are the types of voluntary organizations. Here, what I have understood, what Arvind sir said, and in the entire webinar is that if anybody wants to work in a voluntary organization, he need to have a passion to work for the society. He rightly said, you are going to meet the people who are going to stay in the rural area. You have to understand the people's aspirations, the people's requirement, and exactly what the way how the people are living in the rural area or any area to where we are going to work as in the voluntary organizations. That is very important. You are very well said, sir. I once again repeat that people who wants to work in voluntary organization, they need to have a passion. And as Gayatri madam also explained that what is the framework of voluntary organizations and jobs and roles and all. And finally, the last one slide what madam presented, it was an excellent information for everybody. The people who wants to work in an organization, voluntary organization, maybe in any organization may be relevant. For a voluntary organization, it is more relevant, like the empathy towards the people to whom we are going to work, not for the sake of money or something like that. You need to have that empathy of working for the people. And the second thing is that the domain knowledge will be there to some extent, but once you start working in that area, you will going to get the domain knowledge. And the retaining on focusing on that particular activity where we are going to work for that voluntary organization, about that particular work or what we are going to take up. And the problem solving ability, this is very important. The people, the students, they need to develop this kind of skills, the problem solving ability, that there will be so many challenges you will be facing. Immediately you have to take the decisions. On the right at the time you have to take the decisions. Nobody will come and explain that what you are going to face the problem and how you are going to solve those problems. So the ability to introspect, that is very important. Introspect will not be there in other types of jobs. Introspections will not be taking place in other government sector job or in private sector job. Somebody will be evaluating our work. Whereas here we have to evaluate ourselves. What is that exactly I have done related to that particular problem, whether I am able to solve it or I have done something good for the society, something good for the people, for that what we are going to do. At the end, sir, in the beginning, Arvind sir rightly said the accountability part. Here, we are accountable for the people who are going to fund these organizations or voluntary organizations. We are also accountable for the people to whom we are going to serve. That is a very important part you have told, sir. And on behalf of the university, the Karnataka State Rural Development Panchayat Raj University, on behalf of the people who have joined for this webinar and everybody, I thank Arvind sir for having participated. Within a short period of time, he has agreed to come and deliver a session on this voluntary organizations webinar. I thank you very much, sir, on behalf of the university, on behalf of the people who have joined once again. I thank the Gayatri madam for having given a very good session on this voluntary organization. What are the skills to be developed to who you are going to join an organization, what that type of skills they have to develop. And thank you, madam, for having taken out your time and participated and given a very good session on this webinar. On behalf of the university, I thank you very much, Madam Gayatri, Madam, for having participated. Thank you, Madam. And I thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Vishnukant Chetpalli, sir, for having given an opportunity to organize this webinar. And he has given a broad framework that how this webinar should be and how beneficial should be for the people who are joining from all over the country and outside the country. And I thank you very much, sir, for having given this opportunity. I also thank our registrar, Lakkannavar, sir, for having made this webinar possible. And thank you very much, sir, on behalf of the university and participant. I also take this opportunity to thank Professor Dr. Shashikant and his team. We have worked within a short period of time. We could be able to organize this webinar. I thank you very much, sir, Shashikant, sir, for having organized this webinar. I also thank the people who have joined, the professors, the faculty members, the people from all over the country and outside the country who have joined this webinar and made it successful. I hope you have got the information about the voluntary organizations and skills required for the voluntary organization, what type of voluntary organization should be, and all that information in a nutshell. Our university able to convey the information through these two eminent speakers. I thank you all, one and all, for having participated in this webinar. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Dear participants, the feedback link has been shared on your email IDs as well as the WhatsApp groups. Kindly follow the link over there. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak about our own sector and about the organizations that we work with. And it was an enriching experience for us as well to have participated. So we continue to be linked to the university, and let's look forward to some good times.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I look forward to visiting the university in person rather than in this virtual manner.
Yes, sir.
So let's wait for that day.
Sir, welcome, sir. We are waiting for your visit from Mairada.
Definitely, definitely. Let the situation improve and then we'll be very happy to come there.
Since last 4 months, you were not able to move around. And after normal situation, I request you to first visit Gadag.
Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that.
Of course, with Gayatri Lal, both.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Shashikant. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.